Welcome back to the class, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about roster building once again, but instead of focusing in on a handful of characters or teams and explaining why they're beneficial or good, I want to talk about some concepts, more specifically, some major farming mistakes that you should be avoiding, not just today with whatever you're doing, but also throughout the rest of your time in game. So that kind of leads us to our overall discussion, which is what are the biggest 5 mistakes I see people doing when they're farming and building up their roster with their characters and whatnot. These aren't in any particular order, so let's just go ahead and get right into it. So one of the most common phrases I hear that I don't think makes me cringe, but makes me a little bit cautious is, "Oh, but he's a pilot." And what do we mean by this? There's a lot of characters out there that aren't necessarily good themselves, but they come with a ship, and sometimes that ship redeems the character. A really good example of this, it's not the character shown, would probably be Cad Bane, where Cad Bane, as a character goes, he's pretty atrocious. He's just not very good. But his ship is not only good, but it's really essential to the executor fleet. So that's a character where someone could say, but he's a pilot, and it's totally acceptable, it's cool, not at all a farming mistake. That being said, if you're saying that and applying it to a character who has a garbage ship, that's bad. That's a mistake. Like farming up or relicing up Jedi Consular for his ship and then using that as a justification for doing so, that's not what you want to be doing. We want to be focusing on characters that have high value, whether it be specifically on ground, specifically in fleet, or both. They need to have something redeemable, and he's a pretty good example of one that's just not there. I realize the ship can kind of do some things, but it's not pivotal to any of like your top 5 or 6 fleets in game, and there are much better places to put your resources. If you're wanting to put them into them just because you like the character, that's also fine, but we can't be using this as a justification. Sith Assassin was another really good example of that. Hers will probably age poorly just because Leviathan might make her a superstar, so that very well might become a real line. And if you're gearing the character up for another reason, that's also fine. Like Cad Bane is also required for JMK, but we can't be using this justification to just gear up whatever pilot willy-nilly. And the reason why I have Second Sister in here is because I made a pivotal mistake in my roster. So learn from me here is I took her up to Relic 7 for the Reva mission. Don't do that. Eighth is not only better for the Reva mission, but he's actually better for the Reva team in general. And one of the justifications that I even told myself was, oh, at least she's a pilot, she can use those 2 extra relic levels. That doesn't change anything. Like having 2 extra relic levels on the Interceptor is a very good ship, don't get me wrong. But you're not going to start winning a bunch of matches, or really any match, because she has 2 little more relic levels. She dies in the same amount of hits, and she kills the enemy in the same amount of hits as well. It's not really super relevant. The only case where it does become relevant, and we've talked about this a little bit before, and I think Tarkin, actually Hux is probably a better example, is when the pilot, that specific relic level that you're putting on or whatever you're putting into them, it changes their speed that automatically makes the counter works. One thing that is really important in Hux, if you're ever wanting to use him against Executor in any capacity, he either needs to be
R7
and have mostly 6-dot mods, or R6 with full 6-dot mods, and then it can counter. So again, big mistake, just relicing or investing in characters for the sake of being a pilot when the pilot or the ship itself isn't actually doing anything. This next one we'll probably get some flack for, but here we go. I hear this phrase quite a bit, and again, I don't really cringe, but it makes me very cautious. This character deserves more X, so it deserves more relic levels, it deserves more Zetas, it deserves more Omicrons. When I'm looking at the game from a value perspective, I'm trying to gear up 200 characters over the process of years. I don't want to give a character materials or resources because they deserve it. I want to give them those materials because they need it. What do we mean by that? These are all really good characters. We're not trying to shame any of them specifically, but Savage is a really good example of a character that if you get him to R5, he does just about every single thing you need him to do. We're currently in like the top 200, 300 of Kyber 1, so I don't know what percentage of the game that is. And in GAC, which is really where he shines due to his Omicron, he does everything that I need him to do. Sure, would he be better at R9? Probably. But is he already accomplishing all the goals? Is he already making sure that Trey is able to beat Riva? Is he already making it so that a Galactic Legend or the Mirror is required on defense? Is he already beating whatever else team? Yes, he's doing all those things. And one of the misconceptions I see from a lot of people is he's a really good character, so he just needs all the best things. He needs the highest relic levels, he needs the best mods, and that's just not really accurate. He needs whatever he needs to make him function, and then you can kind of leave him be and go on to another character that probably also needs those investments. A Dark Trooper, he does need mods. I was doing Crate Dragon, don't do that. But anyways, one of the reasons why we're including him here is because I would actually like to have him R7, but my Imperial Troopers beat everything that they need to beat already with him at R5. They already can clean up Lord Vader really well. They can already beat Darth or Sith Empire without Malgus if I ever see that. They're already able to take out CLS in 3v3. They do pretty much everything they need to do. And again, while I love it and while he deserves it, he doesn't need it. He's already able to take out everything he needs to be. Kat is another pretty good example of that. Her kit carries her very far. She's an amazing character. We're not trying to say any of these are bad. In fact, they're so good, they don't really need a lot of this extra investment that comes along with them. They are serviceable, usable, and they can do everything they need to do at a typically lower level. And again, this concept isn't just supposed to be deployed to the three of them, but it's supposed to be across the board. Get your characters to where you need them to be for that time. Leave them there and don't really go back to adjust it until they need it. I think for mid-game players, this might be an important lesson, especially for Gear 12s, where you can take, I'd seen a lot of people and heard a lot of people say they like to take their Sith Empire, for example, to Gear 12. And at Gear 12, for a long time, it'll do everything that it needs to do. And then once you start to get to a higher echelon of PvP, that doesn't cut it anymore. Well, it'll stop beating everything that's supposed to be, and then you take it to relics. You don't necessarily need take everything to relics or to full Zetas or to full Omicrons the second you get it, just because, again, the character quote-unquote deserves it. Next farming mistake I want to talk about, and this is not like a slam on guilds who have TW Omicrons. In fact, it's quite the contrary. Go after the Grand Inquisitor, assuming his event will come back at some time. What we name this one is not a one-man guild, and what do I mean by that? TW Omicrons are good as long as your guild is committed to them. If you're one of 50 people and you throw on a Phasma Omicron, the Phasma Omicron is pretty good. But if you're the only one who does that, that's a drop in the bucket. You are not going to make a difference in a war. You're not going to be winning by 20 banners of what your Phasma team did on offense or defense. It is really good on offense, by the way. But a lot of people do that they see a character like, oh, the Omicron's good, I'll just apply it. You're not going to see any return on that investment in forms of wins or really anything else if you're trying to do it on your own. If you're going after Phasma, you're going after Mara Jade, and if your excuse or your justification for later comes, oh, now I can get into a better guild, that's great, do that. But if you really want to keep playing with the guys you've been playing with, which that's fine, you need to try to be going again along the similar lines and applying the Omicrons that they're applying, or see what they're doing and see if you can talk them into it, something like that. Just don't be the only one with the Phasma or the Mara Jade Omicron, which are both very good. We're not trying to downplay them at all. And the other thing, and this goes beyond TW Omicrons, but Grand Inquisitor is a pretty good example of this right now. A lot of guilds are pushing Riva, but I know of some players that are really trying to get Grand Inquisitor, and they can't because the event's not here. But they also are ultimately not going to be able to get Riva, because if they're one of the only people, or one of the only 5 people in their entire guild that went after Grand Inquisitor, they're not going to be able to get Riva. And they might have sacrificed some other really good teams to be able to get him when they can't get his final tier. Grand Inquisitor certainly isn't bad without Riva, but it's his best form. And if you're giving up another target like, say, Jabba or Starkiller or something like that to be able to get just him when your guild isn't going to help you take you all the way, that can definitely be a mistake. So definitely try to be doing what your guild is doing, or get them to do what you're doing, or find a guild that is. Or if you don't want to do any of that, just focus on something that isn't guild related. Go get Starkiller. He's pretty cool. He's really good in GAC. It's pretty fun in territory battles. Not half bad in Conquest. Anyways, stay on target. This is probably the oldest farming mistake that all of us have made since the beginning of time, is we have a tendency to look at a character and be like, okay, I want this because it does X, Y, and Z. And then all of a sudden, this new event comes out where you need Sith to complete the assault battle. You're like, oh, I'll pivot over to this. And then Ben Solo comes into the game and you're like, oh, actually, I should probably have Rey now. So you switch over to that. And then we get, I don't know, I don't remember what his name is, Terran Malicos or something. He's going to be an unaligned Force user. Oh no, we should put him with Lord Vader, so I'm going to go after that now. And then you never actually farm anything. And we're using Galactic Legends right now because they're kind of the most exaggerated example of all. But this can be set across the board with a lot of different things, whether it be the fleets, whether it be the legendary characters. Really need to stay on target. And one important rule that I would say, especially for these Galactic Legends, is once you've already invested in the bad characters that come with them, and they all have them, that's not really a knock on any of them specifically, but you need to commit. Just finish it out, get whatever it's going to get you. Every single Galactic Legend is good. They don't suck. I realize there is a variance between them, but don't give up on what that Galactic Legend is going to give you, whether it be a really good additional team with Zori, or it be a really good Conquest team that can melt things with Amplify Agony, or it be the Galactic Legend that kills everything in 3v3, or the one that just has a bunch of PvE events going around that'll help you build up resources. They all have their strong suits. They're all going to be able to take you even farther. So if you commit to one, make sure to commit to it, especially if you've already invested in the bad characters. If you're going into Sea and you've done Troopers, that's fine. Like, you know, pivot to something else that you think is more worthy right now. Or Lord Vader, if you already did Bad Batch, like, Bad Batch is very good on their own. That's excusable without Lord Vader. But if you've already done those type of characters like Krennic or Mob Enforcer or Resistance Pilot or whatever else is out there, stay on target. Finish it out. And the last mistake that I see people do is time things poorly. And this is really going to be tied to requirements. And some requirements are a lot harder to get than others. The example that we're going to be taking here, there's more than this, but the one that we're going to be taking is JMK and Wat Tambor. JMK is a Galactic Legend. He's very good at being a Galactic Legend by all accounts. That being said, you do need to have Wat Tambor at Relic 7 to be able to unlock him. So see where you're at. See where your guild's at. Do you guys have Geonosians built up? Do you have any shards of him to begin with? Because if you don't, you should not even be like considering this. And again, I know he's really cool and we all want him for various reasons, but if it's just not possible, you're going to be super frustrated when you gear up your Ayla and your, I guess Mace is pretty good, but you gear up your Ayla, or maybe you're not into JC and you gear up Qui-Gon Jinn, and then you get completely blocked on Wat Tambor and you can't even get JMK. And there's other examples of this as well. Leviathan is probably a good one to call out right now because it requires 2 R9s. And while you can buy those with crystals, a lot of people, if you're not having access to the Crate Dragon Raid, or at least the later half of it, it's going to take you forever to be able to build up those rewards. So know your limitations, know what you're going after, the requirements, what that's actually going to cost of you. Really, with these Galactic Legends, you have to pay a lot of attention because there ends up being these levels of legendaries. For example, Jedi Master Luke or Jabba, they both require Jedi Luke. To get that, you have to get Wampa and Hoda. To get Wampa and Hoda, you have to get X material. So there are a lot of grapevines. Make sure you know what you're doing before you do commit so that you can stay on target and you can get the character that you really want. So those are going to be the 5 biggest farming mistakes. And again, our goal here is for them to be timeless. It's not just about these exact examples. I wanted to get practical with it. But these are things that I've seen people do for years and years. And like I said, I myself am also guilty of them. So that is going to be it for today. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And as always, stay awesome.